Hi, I'm Hanna Zaidi. I am the VP of Payment Strategy and the Chief Compliance Officer of our banking product at Wealthsimple. I set the strategy for payments and money movement, getting direct access to payment infrastructure, basically creating a bank without becoming a bank. And then on the flip side, I'm responsible for like the compliance and risk programs that all of that comes along with. So basically in Canada, a non-bank can't access payment infrastructure and banking infrastructure. And so at Wealthsimple, we've spent a lot of time on like how do we reimagine the banking experience? In order to do that, you need to really like control the full stack. You need to have end-to-end experience so you can have better unit economics, you could have the best client experience, and then you can actually reimagine it. So you actually have to access that infrastructure to do so. And historically in Canada, um, there's been very little to no movement for innovators to be able to access things directly. It's really restricted to our traditional big five banks and a couple credit unions, and innovation has been at a standstill. So what we've been doing over the last few years is we've been chipping away at getting direct access to infrastructure. In Canada. And so what that looks like is becoming a member of Payments Canada as a first operating securities dealer, becoming a member of the e-transfer network, which is like our real-time P2P system, getting a direct issuing license with Visa to be able to issue like cards, and then lastly, to get a settlement account at the Bank of Canada for the upcoming real-time payment system. These are all firsts. These were all milestones that have never been done before. It's largely because we're an ecosystem that prioritizes institutions and not people, unfortunately. And so it's taken a lot of grit and not taking no for an answer to be at the table to do this. But now we have the opportunity to sort of reimagine what banking looks like. And we actually have an event on June 11th where we're talking about end of banking ? And we're going to talk more about what that actually looks like. But I'm really excited because it's been in the works for a couple of years. We've been chipping away at this, and now we get to show you what that looks like. What I can say is we get to flip the script now, and it's think of it as like a checking account where every transaction builds your wealth. And time is money. So we know that going to the bank is, time consuming and largely a waste of time. So anything that you do in person now will happen at the palm of your hands. Actually, maybe the bank will even come to you. Who knows? You have to tune in to find out. We're at an inflection point right now, which is really interesting. We're getting, a lot of pressure from what's happening south of the border. You have tariffs, you have like potential job losses, like the value of the Canadian dollar. There's a lot of things that are putting a lot of attention on competition around industry, around doing something different because what we're doing isn't working. I think anybody on both sides of the aisle could agree that it is not working. I think one of the things that's super interesting to me personally is Trump's payment strategy that's not getting a lot of airtime. So, the US dollar has been, and its global hegemony has been at a bit of a decline. And the administration has noticed that, and they actually have a pretty interesting strategy on how to reassert that dominance. So they're investing in programmable money in the form of stable coins. They have a pretty strong strategy. And so what that means for those that aren't familiar with stable coins is that, this is internet money, internet native money. This is 365 days a year, 24/7, real time, global and borderless. And it's powering the next wave of innovation, whether that's agentic payments, commerce, etc. And so there's that component of it. The other component is, which I find interesting and it's happening concurrently, is the rise of these AI companies in the AI arms race. And the US government saying for the next 10 years, we're not really going to be regulating this space because we want folks to innovate. Now, Canadians are using a lot of these tools, and the next frontier for these companies is payments and banking. So, what does that mean? It means that we might be entering into a world where a lot of our data and a lot of our money is being, and the behavior around that is being set by foreign tech companies that aren't regulated, and our regulators and banks haven't wrapped their head around it. And so, that to me is interesting, but also concerning. There's a world in which we can sort of be masters of our own destiny here. But like, what are we doing right now? We're still debating read access to a checking account. We've classified stablecoins as securities so they can't be used as payment instruments. And it's like, once again, who's winning here? It's not Canadians. We're protecting institutions and the status quo and not people. But on the flip side, there's huge opportunity. Canadians are voting with their wallet. This is like one of the things that is giving rise to the massive success of like our growth at Wealthsimple. People want real options. They want change. They want value, and they're not seeing that right now. And so they're moving towards change. I think one of the things that really is motivating me is I'm helping build something that's going to show Canadians and experience them what real greatness looks like. And I think right now Canadians are overcharged. They are underserved. Pick your poison when it comes to the monopolies in this country, whether it's financial services, telcos, airlines, grocery, etc. And, I think this is an interesting inflection point where I hope that we show Canadians that they can expect more and demand more. I think one of the most patriotic things that you could do as a builder is be critical of the things that are wrong and relentlessly pursue solutions to make things better. And so I think this is what I find really great about working at Wealthsimple is that that's what we're doing. Like, we are tackling a segment of the market where financial service and wealth creation tools were historically reserved for the rich. And so now we're giving access to millions of Canadians to have access to these tools, grow their wealth. And then at the same time, we're building a generational company that's likely going to see the next wave of entrepreneurship. So how are Canadians receiving that, and how are they like seeing the experience? Like, the feedback that we're getting is that they're seeing how frictionless it could be, how much value you could get for low fees. We're a profitable company. So, we're not finding hidden ways to charge you. You know exactly what you're paying for and the value that you're getting. And that's really shocking to people that it actually turns out you're being gouged right now and from your existing financial service providers, and it's actually really sustainable to create a business where you're providing high value, low cost tools to people and making their lives better. So I think that fundamental shift that's happening is interesting, and I'm hopeful towards us continuing in that direction, not just in financial services. I want to see this across the board. And I want Canadians to demand more. 1 in 5 Canadians under the age of 40 actually are Wealthsimple clients, which is like a huge generational shift. I think the other piece of it is like going back to the point around us being able to like reimagine what banking looks like. I think one of the things that, one of the thesis that is growing is like banking isn't something that you should do. It should be something that just happens. It should be something that works. So like your paycheck lands, your rent is paid, your bills are handled, unwanted subscriptions are canceled. Everything's done real time, automatically, intelligently. I think we're moving towards a world of like intent-based finance where you set your controls, your limits, your rules. What are the outcomes that you want? Everything else should be done for you. And then that's what we're building towards, because Canadians have a lot to think about. They shouldn't be flipping through 5 different apps, having to go into a bank branch, calling 3 different people, filling a bunch of paperwork, missing deadlines, getting behind other bills, not understanding their financial picture. That's not working. And it isn't something that people need to be spending their time on doing. It should just work. And so I think the philosophy behind moving towards things that are more intelligent and, based on intention is the path forward. So this is good. This is actually my hot take. If I were to propose a change that could really 10x our productivity, SMBs, Canadians, everybody, I would say let's mandate programmable right access to payment rails and all financial data. And what I mean by that is right now, you as an SMB, you as a Canadian, you don't own your data. Every time you want to open a new application, new credit product, checking account, savings account, investing account, whatever, you have to start from scratch, even in the same institution most of the time. How much time is that? You're at a disadvantage. All the work that you did over there, it doesn't count over here. Credit scores, don't always work the way we want them to. And so one way to address that is data sharing. You having the data right to own your data, share it with whoever you want. Let's take it a step further. Let's make it programmable. You should be able to direct the outcomes that you want based on your information and data. Same thing with payment rails. We're talking right now about real-time payment systems. We've been talking about it for a long time. But what if we made all payment rails programmable? Direct deposit, bill pay, e-transfer, you name it. We should make it programmable, and we should be able to initiate payments and, again, direct it towards the outcomes that we want, because you don't 10x productivity by observing transactions. You 10x them by executing on them. And we're at this really interesting inflection point right now with things like open banking. It died last year when Parliament was prorogued. And we have this opportunity right now, this rare second mover advantage where we've seen how it's worked around the world. We know what works. We know what doesn't work. We know the future is stablecoins and agentic payments. You have foreign tech companies that are deciding what that's going to look like for us. Why don't we take advantage, become masters of our destiny, and actually shape that for our own ecosystem and look at how do we future-proof our roadmap as a country? How do we make sure our entrepreneurs, our SMBs, Canadians are able to actually have the infrastructure to build on top of the future that we know that is coming, instead of debating things like read access to a bank statement. So things innate to real-time payments, open banking, all of these things, fundamental to it is a competition mandate. And, one of the things that unfortunately we do in our pursuit of protecting institutions and not people is that we kill these types of initiatives that would promote competition in Canada. I'll give you an example. Just last week, one of the big banks actually decided to increase their investment account transfer out fees, which, they missed their earnings and they need to find new juice for their revenue. And so instead of actually competing for your business and improving your products so people would stay and people would maybe get more products so they spend more money with you, I'm going to hold your money hostage. I'm going to make it really hard for you to leave. It's a tax on choice, right? And so I want to move away from that. And I want to actually make sure we're building an ecosystem where people are getting value, people are getting utility, people are able to actually focus on improving productivity, because that is an issue that we are grappling with right now, and we're not doing well. I think I'm excited to be part of Tech for Canada because I think, again, we're at an inflection point where people want to hear about what's being built in Canada. We need to flip the narrative. There's extremely smart people, there's grit, there's innovation happening. I think these stories aren't told. They're not told as well. I think the ecosystem needs to come together. We need to focus on building solutions for real problems that Canadians have. I think there's a lot of work that we need to do to build that community again. I think we're starting to build that community. I think I think there's a lot of things that we could do to like further entrench ourselves, and not just in Toronto. I like that it's tech for Canada. There's a ton of really interesting work happening both on the West Coast and East Coast. Like I want to hear those stories. People are solving like problems for themselves. There's like a lot of really interesting agriculture, fintech companies that are coming up that I was actually hearing about the other day. Um, there's a really interesting company around financial products for like fishermen on the East Coast. Like these are just things that we're not hearing about because we're a bit in our sort of bubble where we're constantly looking to the US to mirror and imitate, and I think that that's a miss. I think there is a lot of Canadian specific stories and problems that we're solving, and I want to hear more of that.